Number 6. John Lennon. The singer, songwriter, and arguably the most influential Beatle died like all of our cases in this video, under suspicious circumstances. The Beatles catapulted onto the American scene, eventually becoming the best-selling band in history. However, much like Sam Cooke, their commercial success didn't exclude them from social activism, as the Beatles became a symbol of the counterculture of the 1960s. The most radical of the group was undoubtedly John Lennon, and one only has to go as far as his song Imagine to see this. In his song, he proposes a world without hunger and war, and it's easy to see how this rhetoric can pose a threat to the establishment. In December 1980, 25-year-old Mark David Chapman shot down Lennon as he exited his limousine. Prosecutors have claimed that Chapman was a loner and angry with the fact that his hero had proved to be phony. The theory was widely accepted, despite the fact that it worked to not only cast aspirations on Lennon's authenticity, but also served to undermine his message. A recent report, however, has come to argue that Lennon was actually killed by the CIA. In a newly published work, Phil Strongman argues that Chapman was a stooge made to take the blame. One of his major points attempts to undermine the idea that Chapman was indeed a fan of Lennon. Strongman says, Chapman, the supposed Lennon obsessive and fan of fans, did not own one Lennon single, book, or album. Another example made to label Chapman as a stalker was the claim that he had 4 hours of tapes of Lennon's songs in his rucksack on the day of the shooting. They have never been photographed or produced for the simple reason that they do not exist. Number 5. Michael Jackson. The King of Pop needs no introduction. However, a recent interview by his daughter, Paris Jackson, reveals that his death was no accident, at least allegedly. According to his daughter, Michael Jackson was murdered, and she plans on seeking justice. Asked who would want to see her father murdered, Paris replied that her father had a lot of enemies. In the months leading up to his death, Paris remembers her father fearing for his life, with Michael even saying, "They're going to kill me one day." Before dying, Jackson owed nearly $500 million to creditors. However, this does not mean that the singer was not a shrewd businessman, as many of his debts were the result of borrowing against highly valued assets. One of the shrewdest that he made was purchasing a 50% stake in the Sony ATV publishing catalog. He bought the entity's precursor, ATV, for $47.5 million in 1985, knowing the value of the rights to the songs contained in it by the Beatles. 10 years later, he was paid $100 million for merging his catalog with Sony, and currently the Sony ATV catalog itself is worth nearly $2 billion. This is because of its ownership of copyrights to songs by the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, as well as many others.